Alright guys, welcome back to Home Built, and the Rockster is back! Alright guys, welcome back, and you'll be forgiven to not know what this is because I have not featured it on the channel for quite some time. But this is the Rockster. This was the ugliest Porsche available in Australia when I bought it. Some people did some very horrible things to it, and I kind of salvaged it, but it's still looking a bit, let's face it, it's looking very ratty, and it's been left alone for a long time. But if you don't know the story of this, I bought it, and because of the previous owners, the engine blew up on the first track day, and I actually replaced the engine, the original 2.5 litre flat six, with a 4.2 litre V8 out of an Audi. I'll put a link up here to the playlist. You can go back and watch the series if you want to catch up on this particular car. But yes, last time you saw it on the channel, I had it out on the track, and you might notice it doesn't have any taillights. The previous owner did not bolt the taillights in, and I failed to check them. So when I actually started using it in anger, the taillights fell out, and that's on me. But besides that, it's engine-wise, it runs really well, but there's a few little niggly things I need to fix on it to get it going. And the first thing I want to check on is that it actually exploded out all of its power steering fluid on the last track day. So let's get it up in the air and let's have a look and see what is going on with that. All right, typical Home Built by Jeff fashion. We have some little telltales on the ground. There's some oil on that side. There's some power steering fluid here. So we have a couple of leaks, but let's face it, it's all rust protection. So yeah, it looks like the fittings here on my oil filter relocation kit are leaking slightly. That's not a big deal. And over here, my power steering, it actually looks like I blew out the hose. I obviously didn't make the hose properly when I crimped it, and yeah, it's blown it out. So that should be a relatively simple fix. Let's take that off and fix it up and make that hose again so that it doesn't break, and we'll tighten them up a little bit. So let's jump onto the power steering and disconnect the old fitting, cut off the hose nice and square, and then refit the fitting again. Hopefully this time where it doesn't split and break open and spray power steering fluid everywhere. As for the leak on the oil filter, I think it may actually be leaking from my weld, so that's going to stay as it is. Alright, that was pretty easy. It turns out it ended up when I'd installed it, I did crush that the internal nylon pipe a little bit, and it's obviously split the pipe, and it's just cracked along the edge, and that's blown the pipe out. So quite an easy fix. I've yeah, chopped it off, got a nice clean end, and fitted it back on. So hopefully we have power steering that's going to hold up. Next job is the entire time I've been driving this car, the shifting has been horrendous. Let me show you. So there are two shift cables in the car. There is this upper one which controls the forward-backward throw on the shifter, and the lower one, which you can see here, is busted, and that controls the left and right, and that has not been doing well. So I have a pair of replacement cables. So let's get these ones out and let's see if we can swap the cables in and hopefully have a better go at shifting. So I start by removing the ends of the cables. They're just clipped on, they're just a ball fitting, so that's nice and easy. And then remove the engine cover and start sort of pulling them through back into the cabin. And it's a bit of a challenge to work out which way was the easiest way to do it, but it ended up being taking it back into the inside was the easiest method this time. Alright, so the one on this side, you can see the damaged one, and I got another second-hand set. This one was actually out of the US. It ended up being the most affordable set. And just take note, it's very similar cables on a 996 911 as it is on the Boxster, but the 911 cables are shorter. So just take note of that. So
Getting the cables back through is even more of a challenge, and it's sort of backwards and forwards, up and down on the hoist to try and get to clearance. While I'm there, I am refilling the power steering fluid, and that's also a challenge.
All right, so the cables are replaced and the power steering is now topped up. That's stuff I needed to do in the engine bay in the top there. The shifter, it feels much better. Before, I used to have so much throw left and right. Now it's feeling correct. It is still quite tight. That's mostly because the cables are really tight. Because on the way the cables work for the shifter in the Boxster is that they travel from the gearbox over the top of the engine to the shifter in the cabin. The trouble is, instead of having a flat 6, I have a V8, and the cables have to go up and over the top and come back down, so they're really stretched to get over there, and that's obviously not helping the smoothness of them, but they're connected up, they're working, power steering's working, so we'll call that a win for now. So next thing is, I think we need to refit some taillights.
So I started by scrabbling around trying to find enough globes to fit to these taillights and then refit them again. One of the benefits of smashing up the old ones is I got rid of the horribly tinted old taillights, so I actually have nice, crisp, fresh looking taillights again, which is a bonus.
All right, that is looking much better. I am quite happy with the back end of this now. We've got a bunch of the issues sorted. There is one left that was really bugging me. Basically, on the track last time, I've always, when I've had this car, there's been an issue with the brake pedal where it feels odd and it almost feels like it's just sucking the pedal to the floor. And when I was on the track, whenever I applied the brake, I'd actually stick my toe under the brake pedal and take it off because it would not back off all the way and it was sort of dragging. So I tried a bunch of things. I am pretty certain it is actually the brake booster is the issue. So that's my next job, is to get that old booster out and swap in a new one.
So I start by unbolting the master cylinder from the booster itself, and there's a couple of long bolts that sort of go all the way through the booster, holding the booster onto the firewall there. And getting the master cylinder off took a little bit of prying with a couple of screwdrivers, but it wasn't too bad. And I just want to try and get enough room without disconnecting brake lines because I don't want to re-bleed the brakes. And then it was onto the back of the booster. I had to undo the fitting from the pedal to the booster to get that out, which was a bit of a tight fit, but it all came out pretty smoothly.
All right, so I managed to get the booster out just by unbolting it. It was relatively straightforward, and there's enough movement with sort of taking some of the trim pieces out of the way to move the lines out of the way and not actually have to remove the master cylinder and bleed that. As I believe that's right. The way the pedal was acting, it feels like a booster issue rather than a master cylinder issue. The brakes still worked fine when you got on them. They just wouldn't release all the way, and I believe that is because there was probably a broken diaphragm inside the booster. Now, I got online and I did a fair bit of searching to try and find a Boxster booster, and I couldn't find one for a reasonable price, but I managed to find a 996 one. And as many of you know, the front half of a Boxster and the 996 are basically identical, so there's lots of parts that are universal, and I believe this is one of them. So was just much easier to find a 996 part than a Boxster part. So let's chuck this in now, and hopefully we fix our brake issue.
So thankfully my guess paid off and the 996 booster fit perfectly, so it was just a matter of reversing what I did the first time, reattaching the booster to the pedal first and then reattaching the master cylinder onto the front of the booster and bolt the whole thing with those long bolts going all the way through to the firewall and get everything nice and solid. And with that all bolted back on, I refit all of the trim panels, refit the engine cover and start putting everything back together.
Needs some adjustment.
So it's back to the connection between the booster and the pedal, and it just needs a little bit of a tweak to get the pedal feel right.
So the brakes were still locking on, so I had to actually loosen off this lock nut here and give myself a little bit more slack. So basically screw this end, this is the pedal end, this is the master cylinder end, so I had to screw this in a bit further so that the brakes were not locking on. Now I can roll the car by hand, so the brakes are not locking on. Let's try it again. Yes. Yes. The brakes are not locking on. They're working the way they're supposed to. Ever since I've had this car, it's been a really odd feeling. Whenever you hit the brakes, it would sort of almost feel like you just touch the brakes lightly and it would suck the pedal down. And then, yeah, on the track and whenever I was driving it, you would not, at the end there, it would not release the brake all the way and it was still dragging. It was sort of sucking it down, which I believe obviously was the booster. There's probably a leak in the diaphragm inside that booster, and basically it was sort of creating suction all the time on the brakes, and that's just not what we want. So now the brakes work, power steering works, the shifter's working, the car is now actually working the way it's supposed to. So there will be more content on the Roxor. There's a couple more little things I want to do to it and some big things. But ultimately, I probably will be moving it on. The plan for this was to always build it to be faster than a GT3 around the track. That track is no longer the same. That baseline didn't really work. And I came to realise that I don't personally need a straight track car. I've got Harry, the 911, which will go around and lap the track all day without raising a sweat, and I've got the Ferrari now, and I've got all these. I've got plenty of toys. I don't need a dedicated track car. I'm not that much of a track rat that I'm going to need it. So if anybody is interested in a V8 swapped Boxster with a lot of goodies, message me. But if not, there's, as I said, there's more to come. There's paint. Yeah, there's a few more bits and pieces. So hopefully you'll join me for those, and yeah, do all the things like subscribe, comment, join me on Patreon to watch the videos a day before everybody else, ad-free, and I'll see you on the next one. See you guys.